This Chinese pit bike costs just $400 brand new, and this Japanese pit bike costs $4,000 brand new. So today we're going to compare the pair and see just what you get for your money, especially considering this one was 10 times more expensive than this one. This bike is a TDR Pro 125 that I picked up on eBay for $416, then had an extra $135 of shipping and handling, and the bike turned up at my doorstep with some minor assembly required. Just had to put the front wheel and the handlebars on. This admittedly was a few years ago, but you can still pick these bikes up incredibly cheap on places like eBay and Amazon. The other bike is a Kawasaki KLX110 and one of the most popular pit bikes that you can buy. This is the L version, which has the clutch and a slightly higher seat height. I paid 3,773 Australian dollars for this from a Kawasaki dealer, and I picked that up with a discount of $600. Normally they're north of $4,000 for these brand new here in Australia. One thing to keep in mind on top of that purchase price, there's going to be some extra costs to make this bike a bit more of a pit bike and a bit more adult friendly, whereas the Chinese bike comes set up ready to go for an adult already. We'll talk a bit more about those as we go through and compare the two bikes. Going to do now. Alright, so taking a look at the two bikes, both of them are quite similar in size and seat height. This one I know has got a 730mm seat height, but if you do get the non-clutch version, it's going to be about 2 inches or 50mm lower than that. Both bikes have single cylinder 4-stroke air-cooled engines, 125cc on the Chinese bike versus 110cc on the Kawasaki. Both bikes have 12-inch rear wheels and 14-inch front wheels. Both bikes are 4-speed manual bikes with a clutch. The Chinese bike has got 4 up and the Kawasaki has got a 1 down, 3 up, more of a conventional system. In terms of brakes, the Chinese bike actually has hydraulic disc brakes front and rear, whereas the Kawasaki only has cable drum brakes. Exhaust wise, the Chinese bike's got a bit more of a sportier straight through type muffler, whereas the Kawasaki has got a stock style exhaust, a lot quieter, and we'll see that when we do the sound test. The Kawasaki has got an electric start with a backup kickstarter, whereas the Chinese bike has only got a kickstarter. Let me tell you, having that electric starter is actually a really nice feature to have on a pit bike. The last thing to talk about is the setup and the controls on the bike. Now, the KLX110 is definitely set up at the smaller or youth rider, keeping in mind there is a huge aftermarket scene for these. But if you have a look at the handlebars, for example, like when you've got your legs up on the pegs, there's barely enough room to get a fist in under there. The foot controls are also quite close together and the pegs are quite small. Whereas in comparison on the Chinese bike, when you've got your feet on the pegs, you've got a lot more room under here. The bars are wider out and the foot controls are a lot better positioned as well. Pegs are a lot bigger and the controls are further out for bigger feet. Now, obviously, huge aftermarket scene for the KLX110, so you can get bigger bars and extended foot controls and things like that, which will be going on that bike in the near future. But it's just something to keep in mind that there will be some extra costs on top of the purchase price of the bike to get it set up the way you want it. So I think first up, we'll start off with a bit of a sound test. I've got a decibel app on the phone and see how they compare in the sound and also the sound level. Okay, that is actually ridiculous. I knew the Chinese bike was a lot louder, but to actually put it in numbers is kind of mind-blowing. So the app that I was recording that on has a little chart, and the KLX came in at 80 decibels, which it says is the equivalent of a loud radio just below a bass drum, whereas the Chinese bike came in at a whopping 110 decibels, which it says is industrial noise and just below a jet plane taking off. And it is actually deafening, like it starts to hurt your ears if you're standing there stationary revving it. Okay, so next up, I'm just going to do a quick little test to show how the brakes compare on the two bikes. And then we'll jump into something that I think everyone that gets a pit bike one of the reasons they get it for, and that's doing wheelies. All right, so just a simple little brake grab test. So the brakes on these aren't bad, but they don't grab instantly. First with the hydraulic brakes, you can see it just grabs a lot harder. Brakes definitely come on a lot stronger on this. All right, so I have absolutely no skill when it comes to doing a wheelie, but I'll try and show you the potential of the two bikes. Alright, so I'm obviously terrible at doing wheelies, but this bike has almost no bottom end torque, so it's very hard to pop the front wheel up, whereas the 110 just wants to pop up on one wheel every time you rip on the throttle. So next up, I'm just going to go for a little ride on one of the trails here on the property so you can get a feel for how each of the bikes ride. So for a bit of fun to finish up, we're going to put the bikes head to head and see how they go. Should be interesting. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1, go! Well, that was a lot of fun. In terms of which bike comes out on top, on paper, the Chinese bike does seem like the better buy. It's got a bigger engine, hydraulic disc brakes, it's more set up for an adult rider as a pit bike. It's 10 times cheaper than a new one of these. But in everything else, the Kawasaki wins. Hands down, it's a lot more confidence inspiring to ride, even though it's sort of a bit more cramped with the smaller handlebars. It feels more comfortable to ride. The suspension's a lot better. It's faster. It's got more torque, and quality-wise, it's a lot better as well. To be fair to the Chinese one, it is a few years old now, whereas this is a nearly brand new bike. But having owned both from brand new, I can definitely say I would hands down go for a Japanese bike, and I would go for a second-hand Japanese bike over a brand new Chinese one as well.